Well, hello and welcome to the Tennis Podcast on this fine Monday morning, the last Monday morning before Wimbledon. Yeah, I was in Wimbledon Village yesterday morning. All the shops have their Wimbledon-themed displays in them, lots of sort of mannequins with tennis balls as heads, which is a little bit weird, but I see what they're going for. You're going to love it. David Law is here. How are you doing, David?
I can't wait. In fact, I think I'm going to come down today. I'm supposed to come down on Wednesday, but now I can't wait because I want to see a mannequin with a tennis ball head. Let's do it.
I will take a picture for you on my dog walk later. Now, unfortunately, not with us this morning is Matt Roberts. Where is Matt in this critical week leading up to a Grand Slam, I hear you ask? Well, where else but on a plane to San Sebastian to see Bruce Springsteen? Don't worry, he is back on Wednesday and he promises to be, quote, invigorated. Plus... we have a more than adequate big promise. Yeah, we have a more than adequate replacement for Matt on today's show. A Springsteen fan like myself, who's far too professional to swan off to Spain in the lead up to a Grand Slam. It's the Athletics' Charlie Eccleshare. Hello, Charlie, and thank you for your professionalism.
No, I'm delighted to be here. I mean, would I rather be where Matt is? Yes, 100%. But as a second option, this is wonderful. Delighted. Thank you.
Yes, I feel the same. How do you feel about mannequins with tennis balls as heads?
Good. Yeah, I've always been pro that.
Great. You're going to be in the right place in a few days' time. Right, let's get into it because there is a whole lot to talk about on today's show. Let's start at Queen's, where Carlos Alcaraz has become a two-time HSBC Championships champion, lifting that enormous trophy for the second time in 3 years. He beat Aryna Sabalenka 7-5, 6-7, 6-2 in the final. How good was he in this final, David?
Oh, he was good enough. Very good. And I still think there was room for even better. And actually, you know, he will probably feel like he should have won it in straight sets. I do think Aryna Sabalenka deserved that third set for his application and for his professionalism and for his quality overall. I mean, I think he played pretty much to the upper reaches of his ability in order to take that into three sets. It is tough to do that against Alcaraz when Alcaraz is serving the way he is right now. I mean, that was the big standout for me for Alcaraz this week. That's the first time, apart from the Wimbledon final last year, that's the first time I've seen him put back-to-back serving performances in. And then to sort of withstand the disappointment of not winning it in two, he could so easily have just thought, you know what, it's not that big a deal. I'm trying to win Wimbledon. That's the goal. But no, he wanted this title and he just refreshed himself and he rebooted and off he went and won the third easily. I thought it was an exceptionally good week for Alcaraz.
It's really interesting on the serve thing because he clearly does take a huge amount of pride in it when he does serve well, because he's not someone who serves really well. I think I'm sure he really doesn't like the fact that he can do everything brilliantly, but he's not a great server. So when he does serve well, you can see it means a lot to him. And after the Munar match, he was asked, like, you know, were you showed signs of frustration? Are you disappointed maybe that you let your temper boil over and whatever? It was like, no, that can happen. What I'm annoyed about is my serving. It wasn't good enough. I need to do better, basically. So clearly that's a big preoccupation right now, especially, you know, the fact that we're playing on grass. And I'm sure he does think about that Djokovic final, apart from that weird last game where he blew it. But I think that's the best serving performance I've ever seen from him. And if he serves like that, then, I mean, where's the chink? What do you attack? Because that's the one thing that gives some players hope, I think.
Right. That's what I was thinking all throughout those last couple of matches from Carlos Alcaraz, both in which he broke his own ace record for a best of three set match. He did it in the semi-finals very comfortably in a two set 6-4, 6-4 win over Roberto Bautista Agut. I think he hit 15 in that match, was it? An 8 in the first set, and then he hit 18, I think, in the end in the final. But of course, that was three sets. But both still records for best of three set matches. Like, if you're somebody else in the locker room and and you've already experienced the famous Carlos Alcaraz with the slightly dodgy serve, and now you're looking at the famous Carlos Alcaraz, the serve bot. Like, how demoralising for everybody else. I mean, if he can keep up this serving and this consistency, this is 4 titles in his last 5 tournaments, and he reached the final of the 5th one. We haven't seen any real lapse performances from him. I think this is a problem for the rest of men's tennis for the next 10 years.
Well, yeah, and the thing is as well, it's kind of twofold, the serve issue, because not only is he serving better, but it gives him a focus. I think he's far less likely to sort of let his mind wander. When matches get a bit silly and up and down, that's when, maybe he might start doing stupid stuff. But serving keeps him kind of locked in because he really wants to keep not getting broken. And if he's serving 18 aces, he's serving, that's more than an ace a game. So, for him to then that's such a big thing for him. And I just think you can see he's got a real pride. Like, I don't want to get broken. And that's worrying because, you want him to start getting a bit lax and throwing in some stupid shots and stuff. If he's locked in, then that really is a problem.
That's such a good point. He's like a keeper that wants to keep a clean sheet.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it prevents him from having the lads it's Tottenham energy. David, I feel like the next thing we should do is to hear from Carlos Alcaraz, because we got the chance to speak to him yesterday, minutes after he lifted that incredible trophy. We've been doing review shows, recap shows on Tennis Channel for the last couple of weeks, and a bit of commentary as well. And it's been tremendous fun, and it all culminated yesterday in us getting to have Carlos Alcaraz live on the show. And of course, we asked him quite a lot about the serve. So it feels like the next thing we should do is to hear that interview. And you get a little bit of a Matt Roberts cameo as well. So here we are speaking to the freshly crowned Queen's Club champion, Carlos Alcaraz. We hear you. Right. Carlos, congratulations. You are the King of Queens yet again. How good does it feel to be you right now?
Well, it feels great. To be honest, here at Queens is a really special place. And obviously, seeing back a little bit, and that I came with no expectation. I ended up playing on Sunday and lifting the trophy, playing such a great tennis, and I'm feeling great moving on the grass. I think it's I couldn't ask for a better feeling right now.
And how does it feel to be a serve bot now?
Much easier. The matches, or I can play with less stress, let's say. Knowing that I'm serving great, I think the serve gives you a lot of confidence, a lot of calm during the points, during the punches. So I'm just glad the way that I was serving today and yesterday especially.
Carlos, does this feel now like something that you have a little bit of control over, this serve? Because after the match against Munar, when you weren't serving as well, you made some adjustments, and you've been serving more aces than we've ever seen from you. Do you feel like this could be something you could repeat at Wimbledon and in the future now?
Yeah, absolutely. I know what I have to do. I know what I have to practice, on the serve. So obviously, I think I'm not gonna serve like this every match. There will be some day or some matches that I will not feel the same way. But the good thing is I know what I have to adjust the serve just to make a good a good serve on the matches. So I think that's the positive thing. I know the things that I have to put on on the practices. But yeah, I just hope to play and to serve like this at Wimbledon, because on grass is a really important weapon, and I will try to make the most of it and let's see. But I'll keep putting a lot of focus on the serve, this week, and obviously at Wimbledon.
Carlos, I've always wondered, what is your best surface? You've now won 25 of your last 26 on grass and 34 of your last 36 on clay. So which one is it?
I don't know. I mean, the results are making me even doubt about it. So I don't know which one I could choose. If clay, grass. Honestly, I feel great on both. But we have much tournaments on clay, so I would say clay.
Carlos, this time 2 weeks ago, 14 days ago, you were, I think, in about set number 2 of that of that Roland Garros final. Can you believe that was only 2 weeks ago?
Well, it feels. As a tennis player, we have tournaments week after week after week, and sometimes we don't have time to realize what we have done. So once a tournament began, it's kind of you forgot everything in the past, and you're 100% is in the tournament you're playing. Is the things that are going on right now. So. Yeah, honestly, 2 weeks, it feels like, super long, seeing back. But yeah, it's just, I've been really focused on this tournament this week. So I didn't think, in Roland Garros at all. So just like that.
I hope you get the chance to enjoy it soon. Carlos, congratulations. Could you show us the trophy? I think it's the biggest trophy in tennis.
I think so. At least I've never lifted a trophy like this before, so it is.
Let's have a look.
Whoa! Look at that.
Yeah, that's a big one. Is it heavy?
It is really heavy.
I'll let you.
The biggest.
We'll let you put it down. Enjoy the celebrations. Quick trip back to Ibiza.
No, I don't think so. I wish, but I hope to be back home. But I'm gonna stay here in London. But I wish.
Enjoy the celebrations in London, Carlos. Thanks so much for speaking to us.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
The look of glee, Charlie, when he lifted up that trophy, and David's look of glee when he lifted up that trophy. Big, like how he just. It just makes you smile, doesn't he? And everything you had to say there totally, I think, backed up your take about the serve and it giving him a focus. I think that's a really interesting point, actually.
I mean, serve's such an interesting shot as well because at any level, there's such a pride. I think it really affects how one views oneself as a tennis player. Like, even if you win a match, but you're getting broken all the time, it can. I don't know. I just think there's something about it. It's so like it's like your defenses have been breached if you keep getting broken, and I think it does just give you a kind of feeling of strength and almost invincibility. And that's what he seems to have. Like when Pete Sampras would win Wimbledon, it would be like he was basically unbreakable. And no matter what else was going on, if you have that gives you a real aura.
David has entered the conversation.
Yeah, well, I've always thought, and I think Carlos Alcaraz has always thought, that the serve is a bit boring, like that it's not really something to be getting excited about because, that's not the fun bit, is it? It's the running around and seeing what you can do and make people jump out their seats. And I think it's something that he's only getting now as a source of pride as he's realised that it's a bit like when you're a kid and you learn to work hard. I know this because this is what happened to me. I discovered work ethic, and suddenly I found out that that's cool, and getting results is cool. I'm trying to teach my son this, and I feel like Alcaraz is suddenly realizing, gee, if I serve well, these guys can't beat me. It's amazing, but you have to. As him, you have to accept that it's not going to be as fun. And I think as viewers, we're going to have to accept that and enjoy his performances. Because 2 sets of that yesterday were not fun, really. It was only really in the third set that it got fun. And I just think that that's okay.
Yeah, you could say all 3 sets weren't that fun, really. Like the second set tiebreak was fun. and there was jeopardy in it. Alcaraz did a totally improbable point and a finger to the ear, and obviously that's what I remember. But it was not a great tennis match. We were making comparisons to the 90s, to grass court tennis in the 90s in our commentary, and that was mostly because for me, David, so many of Alcaraz's service games were going by in about a minute.
Yeah,
and the pressure that puts on the opponent. You know, Lehechka would fend off a break point or hold to deuce or to 30. You know, a fairly normal service game, and suddenly he'd have the balls in his hand again because Alcaraz is just held to love in about 45 seconds. And
that's why I was so impressed with Lehechka for even keeping it close. But yeah, this is something. I mean, everybody keeps talking about this Wimbledon final, that this is where it was seen, and I don't even remember that. I don't remember it feeling quite like what we've seen the last couple of days. I mean, your reference to the 90s tennis, I remember the year before I started working at Queen's, 1995, there was a semi-final between, I think, Guy Forget and Pete Sampras, and I think there might have been about 3 rallies in the match that were longer than 3 strokes.
This is honestly, the era when you fell in love with tennis, David.
I know.
How did you manage it?
That's true love, Catherine. If you can fall in love with something as sort of functional
that's
as that
loving
was.
Someone on their worst day, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, I always remember I was on a little camping holiday with my dad and my sister and my brother-in-law. So I'd finished my exams for my first year of university, and I remember being on this camping trip, listening to the radio, listening to John Inverdale present the 5 Live coverage back then in 1995. And I remember him asking the pundit, an Australian coach, I think Warren Jakes, asking him, if tennis is like this, how do we appreciate it? How do we enjoy it? You know, because all that's happening is a serve is going down and somebody's failing to return it. And he said, well, at times like this, you've just got to appreciate the beauty of the serve. And I remember trying to get on board with that, even as a Pete Sampras fan, trying to get on board with it and really struggling. But watching it yesterday, I could appreciate it without necessarily enjoying it. And I remember thinking, God, Alcaraz, this is different level now.
Well, I guess as well, because there are other elements there. It's not all that there is. Whereas back then, in a lot of those matches, that was kind of, that was all that you were seeing. You know, whereas at least with Alcaraz, you're like, oh, this is quite intriguing. This is interesting, because we've often talked about the fact that he doesn't have this huge serve and whatever. But on the subject of 90s grass court tennis, David, when Alcaraz and Munar played their match and it was clocked at 3:23, I've been sent here, but I think it was actually 3:26 maybe. Anyway, we were told it was the longest match at Queen since 1991, when Malavai Washington beat Mark Kyle. Yeah, I remember Mark Kyle. He'd beaten Sampras that year at Queen's. That's right, yeah.
Extraordinarily.
But this match was clocked at 3 hours 31, despite a scoreline. And bear in mind, this is grass court tennis in 1991. A scoreline of 6-7, and it was only 7-3 in the tiebreak, 6-3, 6-2. Now, I do not believe for a second that match could have taken 3.5 hours.
No,
it just
that
couldn't,
sounds
couldn't
dodgy.
it? That
can't
be right.
Both
could there have been a stoppage?
Exactly. Yeah, unless there was a 2-hour stop mid-match.
I'm going to look into it, Charlie. I'm going to contact both players and see if I can find out.
So
we tried to get Malavai Washington, and he didn't engage, because we were like, we've got to find.
It's the last record that he's holding on to, Charlie. He doesn't want it taken from him. So if that gets struck off the record, does the Alcaraz-Munar match become the longest in Queen's history?
Yeah, though I think the records only go back to 1990. Though I'd be astonished if there was anything longer pre-1990. But yeah, it would be the longest on record.
God,
but yes, David,
Washington
run with this.
refusing to engage. That's. Can we track down Mark Kyle?
Oh, I'm going to be trying.
This man that I hadn't heard of 5 minutes ago.
I've already found his website. So
I mean, teeing up Washington next year will be 30 years since his Wimbledon final.
There we are.
It'll be very in demand. You'll remember the Richard Krajicek one.
How long before you try and track down the streaker?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Great shout.
You actually
I'll leave that one with you,
Not
Charlie.
for me, but someone can.
Look, we're gonna be doing a lot of Wimbledon previews over the course of this week, so we'll have plenty of time to talk about this. But it feels like it'd be remiss not just to touch upon Wimbledon quickly with Alcaraz. Like, can anyone beat him? And does he feel? We had this conversation yesterday in our wrap show, Charlie, about before Roland Garros. We all picked Alcaraz as the favourite. We all I think picked that Alcaraz-Sinner final to happen, or thought that was the single most likely scenario. But we said if one of them isn't going to get there, it's more likely to be Alcaraz, because he's more susceptible to bumps along the road. And I personally don't feel that way about Alcaraz now. I feel like he's an incredibly strong favourite now for this Wimbledon title. And David, I think you said yesterday that he's the strongest favourite he's ever been for Wimbledon, including, of course, the last 2 years.
Yeah, I don't know what you think about that, Charlie. I mean, when he came in 2 years ago, Djokovic was the favourite, and I remember feeling just beforehand that actually I think Alcaraz has got a real chance. And then last year, Alcaraz was the favourite, but you know he wasn't playing like this. He wasn't coming into the event, even though he'd won the French Open. It wasn't like this.
No, I think that's right. In theory, I do have a feeling he will have a flat performance and not win the tournament. I don't know where this has come from. I think it's because last year I thought the same. I think it's easy for him and a bit Djokovic to lull us into forgetting like how hard doing the French Open Wimbledon double actually is. And so I think it's easy to be like, oh, well, he did it last year, of course he'll do it. You know, it's easy. It's really not. Like it's a really, really historically difficult thing to do. You know, unless you're Bjorn Borg. Nadal did it a couple of times, Federer did it once, and Djokovic has done it a couple of times, but it's really bloody hard. And I just wonder if there will come a point at which, you know, he's played a huge amount. It's also very rare, I think Nadal's done it, to do the French Open Queens Wimbledon triple. And I know partly that's because not everyone plays Queens, but it's a lot. And I just wonder if there will come a point at which he, I don't know, it just gets away from him. Like, and he has teetered on the brink. You know, obviously the French Open final, he was basically off the brink. You know, he was so close to that edge. But
new definition of brink.
Yeah, like that is real brinkmanship. So yeah, I think in theory you're right. Like he is, because he's never cut. You know, yeah, last year he was playing nowhere near this level. But that's just a feeling I have that. Yeah, that there has to come a point at which she comes back down to earth.
That's a real cat amongst the pigeons, David, because Charlie's feelings have a tendency to be. This is the guy that saw Marketa Vondrousova coming. No one's ever seen Marketa Vondrousova coming.
Yeah, actually, do you see her? We can do that. I mean, who's picking up the pieces then, Charlie?
Either Djokovic or Sinner. I mean, I haven't yet in this premonition I've had, I haven't yet seen who of those two will benefit. But I do also think, just a comparison with last year, yes, Alcaraz is in a far better shape himself. Novak Djokovic, I think, would also be in far better shape. I mean, bear in mind that Alcaraz's main two rivals last year for the title, Sinner got ill and lost in the quarters, so he didn't have to play Alcaraz in the semi. That was a nice little bonus. He played Medvedev instead, and then in the final he played a Novak Djokovic who was a few weeks out from knee surgery. And let's be honest, looked a shadow of himself in that final. The same Novak Djokovic, by the way, who beat him not long after in the French Open. And there is a world in which Djokovic pulls out that performance at that year's Wimbledon. So, and we're saying, holy heck, like, where did that come from? Well, he did it in Paris. And so I think Djokovic will be, is in far better shape as well. And I think Sinner, even though, yes, he's coming off a huge disappointment, I think he's got another year of Wimbledon grass and playing Wimbledon last year as like the Jannik Sinner we now know. So I think, relatively speaking, his rivals are also in better shape. So yeah, I think I would probably go Sinner to pick up the pieces, just because that feels like the sensible choice. But I wouldn't rule out Novak having a run as well.
Just quickly, I feel like we should give Yuri Lehechka his flowers a bit before we move on, because he is some grass court player. And he proved that over the course of the week and in the final, I think, against Carlos Alcaraz. I didn't realise, David, that he could do a lot of the things we saw him do at Queen's this week. And Matt reminded us early doors, I think, after his second win over Gabriel Diallo. He beat de Minaur handily, Diallo, Fernley, Draper, and then challenged Alcaraz in that final, that he had to miss the whole of the grass court season last year. He got injured in Madrid, had to skip the season. He has reached round 4 of Wimbledon before, and he despite the fact that it feels like he's been around a long time, he is still a very young player, and this guy can play on grass. It looks to me like his best surface, David.
Yeah, he actually looks like a specialist. And yet he's adept on the other surfaces, and I feel like we've yet to see the best of him because he keeps getting stopped when he's up and running because of a back injury or something like that. He's got a body that has broken down a lot, and yet he came out onto this court and he just looked as though he'd been given extra impetus, as though this is a surface that really gels with his skill set, and he has this enjoyment of getting down low and living with the ball and absorbing power and redirecting it and getting into the net and showing hands that I didn't think he had. His ability to take pace off a ball. I mean, one of the points late in that second set when he kind of dominated Alcaraz from the baseline, as players can do, but then they come in on a shot and they hit a drop volley and you're like, oh my word, why have you done that? He's going to get to it and make you look a fool. But his touch was so good that he was able to do it without Alcaraz getting there, and that's rare. He doesn't panic at the net. He's got good composure, and he was cracking down serves at 135, 138 regularly into the sort of chest of opponents. He's got a vicious flat body serve. He hit loads of aces. You would not want to face this guy. If he can maintain his fitness and maintain that sort of form, he is week 2 material.
Yeah, I have to say as well, he's one of the first time I'd spoken to him was this week just gone at Queen's, and he seems like a really nice guy, thoughtful, and you realise like you do with a lot of players, because there are so many players that we follow, you often have to make these fairly snap judgments based on not very much, and so really to me this year he was the guy who Djokovic took out pretty comfortably at the Australian Open. And I remember feeling really disappointed by that match because I thought, maybe this will be something. And then you kind of put that on the player and you'll be like, oh gosh, you've ruined my night with this match that I thought was going to be good and then isn't. And then obviously he got absolutely destroyed by Yannick Sinner at Roland Garros, and you kind of think, oh, okay, well that's him, which is so stupid, obviously. But you kind of just distill things, and then you see him have a run like this. And you realise, there's so much to his game, and he is young. He's basically exactly the same age as Jack Draper. They're born a month apart. But he is someone who I think because there was hype about when he was coming through, maybe, and then you write off a bit. What I find interesting with him as well, and this takes me back to when I used to do the predictions with you guys, is that what always happens with
before
Wimbledon.
You resigned.
Before I resigned, because of people like Yuri Lehechka. No, but you'll have someone who has a run at Queen's or a grass court event, and there'll be someone who's had a run at a pre-Wimbledon event who then does well at Wimbledon, and then there'll be another who crashes out in the first round or will make you look really stupid, and you just don't know who's going to be the one. Like Yuri Lehechka, he could easily go and have a run at Wimbledon. He could also go out first round and you go, well, what was Queen's about? That just, and it's like, I know one of these will happen to one of these. I just don't know which. But he will be someone I'll be watching with interest, because I agree with David. No one's going to want to play him early on. There aren't many people who look like they really appreciate and have a feel for the grass, and he is one of them.
Charlie's gone with the Alcaraz as the guy to sort of have a good Queen's and then just
yeah, exactly.
Screw it up at Wimbledon.
He'll be gone in the first round.
How do we feel about Jack Draper after Queen's? Reached the semi-finals. By doing so, he secured number 4 seed at Wimbledon, which would mean he's guaranteed not to face Alcaraz or Sinner until the semi-finals. But getting to the semi-finals is a big ask for a guy that has never been past the second round at Wimbledon, David, and is suffering from tonsillitis. That's what he revealed after his loss to Yuri Lehechka. Not in an excusey way. I didn't get that vibe from him at all. He didn't come into the press conference room and say this is why I lost. And actually, I'd clocked that his voice hadn't sounded right all week, and he had been suffering from it all week and battling through it. So there's positives there, aren't there, that he was able to win so much in spite of this tonsillitis. But it's a worry, isn't it? You know, he's already got the hype to deal with, and now he's got an illness as well and a disrupted preparation. What do you think? What's realistic to expect from him?
Well, I really will be at pains not to expect him to live up to that seeding, the fourth seeding, and I feel like I'd like to think I would have felt like that regardless of the tonsillitis, because I think it's a little harsh. His rise has been so meteoric, really, considering I would never have thought he would have been a top 5 player this time last year. Not yet, you know, maybe one day, but I thought it would take a while. So it's something else that he's done this. This is going to sap his energy for a few days, you would have thought, and might end up impacting what he's able to do at Wimbledon. And I do worry for his sort of state of mind and being happy to be out there and compete without worrying about this on top of all the expectations. But fingers crossed that he can come through that. To me, if he gets into the second week, that is success. I would be perfectly happy to see him in that draw on Monday, second Monday. And whether he wins or loses that match, or whether he wins and loses a quarterfinal, I think you've got to say that's decent, and it's a good stepping stone from where he was.
Yeah, I think it was. He was quite clear throughout the week. He wasn't really playing his best. He definitely was aware of that, and I think that's right. You know, all his matches were pretty close. You know, some of them could have gone either way before the semi-final. And I think, yeah, to be playing with tonsillitis and in that heat on Saturday, it was tough. He kind of, it felt to me a bit like he did what he needed to do. And what he needed to do was, you know, get to the semi to get that top 4 seeding. He's also been at pains to say, like, you know, let's not just assume I'm going to roll into the semi-final. Like, there's a heck of a lot of tennis to be played before then. It will be really interesting, and I'm working on a piece kind of about being the guy at Wimbledon and the pressure that brings, you know, and have spoken to people.
Is that just an excuse to try and speak to Greg?
I did speak to Greg for the piece, Catherine, because...
Which year was he the guy?
Well, David, 98, he comes in as the number 4 seed, having just had a breakthrough run at the US Open the year before. So
is that the year he did his ankle?
Exactly, against Tielemans.
He loves to talk about how he did his ankle.
Well, I do remember it, you know, happening. And I was a big Greg fan at the time. I was gutted. And then that guy, was it Tielemans? Is that how it's pronounced?
Yeah.
Lawrence Tielemans? Yeah. And then he beat Tim, as you mentioned, because that was the 98 year where everyone kind of went out. But he didn't, you know, Greg obviously didn't really get the chance to properly play, because he played injured that year, went out in the first round. But spoke, you know, and Tim I spoke to a lot about this, and you know what he said, which is interesting. He was like, we as the media, or at least now, we focus a lot on the downsides of the pressure and that element of it, which is part of it. But he's also like, it's also a huge advantage. You know, and you look at, you know, most British players are elevated by playing at Wimbledon. And certainly, you know, he got to 4 semi-finals here of his 6 career semis. And yes, slam semis. And yes, obviously, grass was also his best surface. But, you know, he rode that wave. And I think that's the key thing, is can you harness that energy? But it is double-edged in a way, because there is then a flatness if a crowd's there and right with you and then it's not really happening. Inevitably, then fans can get edgy and there is a bit of a letdown. He seems to be pretty level-headed about it. So I don't think it will come down necessarily to, you know, if he does go out early or something like that, I don't think it'll be like, oh, he couldn't handle the pressure. I just think like there are a lot of really good players knocking around. And, you know, the way the men's draw is, there is just the potential. You meet someone like Bublik and he plays incredibly well. And especially on grass, you know, you come with someone who has a good serving day. But I think it's all there for him. The sense I get is, you know, to actually go and win the thing, I think this year's probably a year too early. But I think he'll be in that conversation in years to come, if he's not already. I mean, I would put him probably as going by ranking anyway. He's the fourth favourite. I think he's somewhere below those, the three at the top to actually, you know, be expected to go and win it. But yeah, I just hope he's healthy. Like, that's the main thing. It'd be a shame if he doesn't really get the chance to properly go for it this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Just before we move on from Queen's reflections on the 2 weeks as a whole, obviously the first time since 1973 that it's been a 2-week affair. I mean, the grass held up incredibly well. Incredible credit to Graham Kimpton, the head groundsman there, and his whole team that just made an absolute nonsense of all the worry and alarm expressed by the ATP when the women's event was announced about, you know, the shape that the grass would be in for the men after the women had their way with it, because, you know, it was two incredibly hot, challenging weeks, and the grass was in pretty great shape yesterday for the men's final. I mean, there's the prize money disparity that leaves me very uncomfortable still. It's even more so given what a roaring success that women's event was. The total prize fund for the WTA event, $1.4 million, and that has been voluntarily increased by the LTA by a third, but the ATP prize fund is still more than $1 million more than that. 2.1 million pounds versus 1.04 million pounds, so double essentially. And the LTA have pledged equality on that front by 2029, but what?
Yeah, I think what that did as well is
now.
But also that sort of served as a reminder of that huge disparity that exists outside of the biggest tournaments across the board, because like the minimums that exist on the tours are so different. And and if you have those, then obviously that's gonna enforce what people do. If they see a minimum, then that affects where they think they should benchmark it. I mean, I think you look at other tournaments and there's still such huge disparities. And Queen's as well said the WTA event served a reminder, because it was so vibrant and so well attended, just how many events aren't across the year. You know, it was actually quite striking in a way to see a 500 that was so packed out. And I think that's the benchmark. They should all be like that.
And that was with, I think, 80%, more than 80% of the WTA tickets sold, and that was with them going on sale after the ATP event had sold out. So if you think of it as a finite amount of volume of demand, the ATP got to exploit all of that and sell out, and then the WTA event got the rest. So I hope they go on sale at the same time this year. And look, good on the LTA for making up some of that. I do think it's a PR open goal for HSBC. Surely. I mean, you're a bank, presumably you have money. I know it's great that they're sponsoring, you know, both events and supporting tennis and women's tennis and all of that, but even looking at it from a kind of mercenary marketing perspective, what an open goal to say we have put in the money to equal the prize money, because that's the right thing to do. That's what I would do if I was head of marketing at HSBC.
Hopefully they're listening.
Right, we move on to Halle, and this is where, Charlie, you finally get the chance to talk about Alexander Bublik, because we've got you down here as a Bublik guy. He's won the title, 6-3, 7-6 over Daniil Medvedev in the final. Medvedev had a 6-0 head-to-head going into that final, and of course earlier in the week Bublik had beaten Yannick Sinner in the quarterfinal, 3-6, 6-3, 6-4. Sinner's first loss to someone other than Carlos Alcaraz since Cincinnati 2024, and his first loss to someone outside the top 20 since Cincinnati 2023. Coupled with the quarterfinal at Roland Garros, Charlie, is this some consistency from Alexander Bublik?
It's funny, yeah. When I was in Paris and working on a piece on Bublik, I had a chat with his agent and manager who's known him forever. They've been working together for a long, long time. And he was talking all about Alexander Bublik and how he is, and because I do find him a fascinating character, as I talked about on the Friends episode after the review show. It was one of my favourite stories of the tournament. But he said something. He was like, "Yeah, we've always thought he'd win Wimbledon eventually." And it was a kind of throwaway comment, but it's just like, and I'm not suggesting that's ever going to happen, but it just put this seed in my. The way he said it was just so like, as if that was like a really normal thing, as if that's something everyone in tennis has always said. But it was like, yeah, we definitely think he's got that in him. And Wimbledon's always been the one they thought he'd be best suited to. And I think Bublik himself has talked about how the grass makes the most sense for him. So he's just suddenly kind of, I don't know, come from nowhere to just catapult himself into the conversation. And you talk about people no one would want to face. I'm sorry, there is no one who would want Bublik anywhere near their side of the draw. I mean, as Medvedev was saying in his post-match speech, which was really funny, like, hopefully you'll be on Alcaraz and Sinner's quarter or side and just wreak some havoc there. And I think that would be really fun. Who, like everyone else, would love to see him, play a Sinner or a Djokovic or an Alcaraz kind of as early as possible. He's just like, what's so unique about him, I think, is that he's got all the kind of dinky touch, feel, trick shots, but then a cannon of a serve. Like, this is not Corentin Moutet. This is not someone who's like, doing all of that stuff, but then is underarm serving because he doesn't really have much of a serve. Like, Bublik can underarm serve, but he's got a sort of Kyrgios style underarm serve because people are kind of cowering behind the baseline because they know he can also bang them down at close to 140. So he is a really interesting player. And again, just going back though, that you hope he's not one of these guys who has sort of burnt himself out a bit by having a big grass court run on top of obviously that Roland Garros quarterfinal. But I'm really, really intrigued to watch him. And, often one talks about in sport of kind of homogenization and lots of players playing the same way. He does not. Like, he plays his own way, and he's going to be one of the names I'm looking out for in the Wimbledon draw.
And he'll be seeded, which I think
he will, which is a bit of a shame, I have to say. I'm pleased for him, but that would have been hilarious, wouldn't it? Imagine him as a floater.
Yeah. I imagine how relieved all the seeds are in the draw that he's got himself a seeding. I'm taking note of this, David, from the Vondrousova guy.
Yeah, you should. I do feel if you put me on the spot right now, I'll put myself on the spot. I think Bublik is more likely to win Wimbledon than Jack Draper this year. I don't think either of them are going to win it, but I think that
you just think he could get hot and.
He can get hot.
I think I agree with that.
I don't
this
think
year.
Draper's quite ready, and this tonsillitis, that's not ideal at all. And I think Draper's going to work his way in, and in 3 years, I think he's going to be a semi-finalist at worst, as long as he doesn't get injured. But I could see Bublik just cutting a swathe through this draw. I really could.
Ooh.
Or losing in the first round.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. I mean, the thing with him is like he has put it together. He has been consistent, but you think there is that potential. He could suddenly lose interest in a match, and that is kind of the risk with him. Obviously, there's been less of that of late, but he might. And
I do get the impression. I do get the impression from what he's been saying after these breakthrough results that he's getting a taste for it, isn't he? Like how good and satisfying it feels to live up to his potential, or certainly the externally perceived potential. He keeps getting quite emotional. He keeps having these quite profound moments, doesn't he? He gave a really nice interview after winning yesterday in Halle, revealed that after Wimbledon last year, he was very, very close to quitting tennis. And it was his coach that talked him into giving it a go. He said, look, if you need to take a couple of months off, then so be it. Just don't do anything rash.
But I think, like, to David's point earlier about with Alcaraz realizing that, like, hard work, as kind of unsexy as it is, like, for someone like Bublik, more hard work and everything like that gives you more of a platform to do the fun stuff. Like, you know, the fitter you are, the better you're going to be in position to hit a drop shot through your legs. Like, that's kind of how it works. And he does, he does look like he's got a bit of a taste for it. Because I asked him after the Draper match, you know, I was like, yes, you don't want to be sacrificing everything, but he just come off court, said it was like the best moment of his life. I was like, does this kind of give you the taste for it? And he kind of picked me up because I said, like, you know, it might lead to more moments like this. And he was like, well, that's the key word, might. Like, there's no guarantee. But I imagine he is having a lot of fun, you know, and he's still being true to himself. He's still kind of playing in a very inventive, creative way. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. You do wonder as well whether he's a little bit, maybe this is unfair, but if it feels a little bit now or never, maybe, and that he's so riding the crest of this wave, it's kind of like, don't stop, don't think about it, just keep doing what you're doing, because you never know when. Don't
listen to the fact that David Law's just made an outlandish prediction.
Yeah.
Don't be this tournament's Fonseca.
It's your fault, Catherine. Push me into it.
Right, that's it for part one. We'll be back in part two to talk about Marketa Vondrousova with the Marketa Vondrousova guy. Welcome back to part two of the tennis podcast, where we head to Berlin now, and Marketa Vondrousova popping up and saying hi. She's won the title. She's beat Wang Jinyu 7-6, 4-6, 6-2 in the final. She also beat, settle in for this list of players, folks, Madison Keys, Diana Schneider, Ons Jabeur, and Aryna Sabalenka en route to that final. One of Matt's dormant volcanoes has erupted. Charlie, did you see it coming?
Oh, God, no. Not at all. I mean, she seemed like she was maybe getting back to being, you know, someone who could just play matches, and that was itself a bonus after the injury she's had. But no, I didn't see this run coming. And I have to say, when someone's had such serious injuries, I don't know, I always just kind of treat them with care a little bit. Even off the back of this, I still wouldn't have big expectations going into Wimbledon. And sorry if that's kind of dampening people's excitement about this run. Just because, you know, we've seen it with Karolina Muchova a bit as well. Like, you know, she had that US Open run. It was kind of like, oh, great, she's back. It's like, doesn't always work like that. You know, I think it's not always linear when you're coming back from an injury like this. There'll be ups, there'll be some downs. And I'm just so pleased that she had this up, because honestly, like, I wouldn't have necessarily thought, I wouldn't have thought when this was going to happen. I still would have thought there was an if about whether she was going to be able to come back and play this level of tennis. And, you know, you think back to last year, she went out in the first round at Wimbledon and, you know, as the defending champion, and just how upsetting that was for her, clearly, as, you know, as it would be for anyone. And, just an amazing turnaround from then. But I wouldn't necessarily expect it to translate to a deep run at Wimbledon.
Yeah, it's almost like she's wasted her eruption.
Kind of, yeah.
On Berlin. You've gone 2 weeks too soon.
Yeah.
The win over Sabalenka, David, was a real reminder of how that kind of player can be a problem for Sabalenka. And obviously Vondrousova is an elite version of that kind of player. She's a Wimbledon champion, you know, particularly on this surface. But it was, I don't know, I found that match really interesting from a Sabalenka perspective.
And a reminder as well of how the very top women in the world have less time to turn matches around at Grand Slams because there isn't a best of 5 set format. I do think there are, throughout history, a lot of players that have maybe been derailed over the best of three that wouldn't have been had they been able to have the full format, full Grand Slam format. But yes, I do think Sabalenka in particular, and this type of player in particular, yeah, this is where it can get messy, because Vondrousova can just do things that the others can't. She can use the pace against you. She can turn it around you, on you, in different angles. And I mean, and she in the final, for instance, was struggling, I feel like, because she was the favourite almost, and she was expected to make the play, and she managed to kind of get the win, but it was after that incredible run to get to the final, it was looking very dicey. I mean, I think she was 6-2 down in the first set tiebreak before she turned that around and won. But yeah, I do find Sabalenka fascinating because of what's happened in the last 6 weeks or so, getting to the final, being so unsporting in her comments afterwards, and getting a lot of stick for it, and now her sort of rowing back on it, or at least apologising for it. Does this affect her? Does this make her play a little win in herself, perhaps, at the Wimbledon, which I never thought of that she would ever do? But I think there might be something in that it inhibits her a little bit.
Yeah, she really, really has rode back on those post-match comments from Roland Garros, and good on her for doing this. She told Eurosport Germany, it was completely unprofessional of me. I let my emotions get the better of me. I absolutely regret what I said. We all make mistakes. I'm just a human being who's still learning in life. I think we all have those days when we lose control. But what I also want to say is that I wrote to Coco afterward, not immediately, but recently. She said, I never intended to attack her. I was super emotional and not very smart at that press conference. I'm not necessarily grateful for what I did. It took me a while to go back and think about it, to approach it with open eyes and to understand. I realised a lot about myself. Why do I lose so many finals? And she said, I kept getting so emotional. I learned a lot. Above all, one thing, I'm the one who always treats my opponents with respect, whether I win or lose. Without that respect, I wouldn't be where I am today. So it was tough, but very valuable lesson for me. I mean, good on her for really owning it the way she has. But exactly as you say, David, those comments are an indicator of how kind of profoundly this has made her think. And I don't know, what do you think, Charlie? There could be a hangover for Wimbledon, or she could definitely win the title.
Yeah, I mean, she does go in as the favourite. I think it's interesting with these. I was just thinking about more generally with the kind of rivalries and having an edge between players in the kind of social media age. I feel like that's kind of been blunted in a way, which is a bit of a shame. Like, I think what Sabalenka did wasn't right after the final, but I also think players should be able to do that without such fear of a social media backlash that everyone basically ends up saying the same thing. And like, I was thinking back, Federer was about Djokovic was often fairly similar to this. Like, if you look at what he says after that, when Djokovic beats him in the 2011 US Open semi and he saves the match points, Federer basically says, yeah, he swung and got lucky on match point. Like, it's pretty graceless stuff, but it's if he did that now, he'd have been so jumped on, and he then would have had to issue an apology, probably on a notes app on Twitter, and it would all been a big thing. And it's just like, I don't know, I think having an edge is great. Like that, it hooks people into the sport, and it's good that Sabalenka's done this, and I'm sure it's done. She believes it and whatever. But like, I do think we should also allow rivalries to develop where there can be a bit of spikiness. Because if you look at tennis at the moment, there isn't really any, at least publicly, in the rivalries, and I think that that really does add something. So I don't know. I just think it's. People should be able to vent and be emotional after these hugely emotional matches and not get, but they are inevitably going to get so condemned by so many people that they then will row back on them. So I just think it'll be interesting to see what happens. I just really hope these two play again in a final soon, and we can see how that plays out.
I think there still will be some spice there,
I
Charlie.
hope so. Don't you
I think
I
so.
mean, like,
Yeah.
and I'm not trying to like push artificial spice or aggro, but I just think people want to see people being authentic. And if being authentic is I'm pissed off because I've lost and I don't think I should have lost, then I'm all for that.
Yep, me too. I'm here for aggro. I would say that Maria Sakkari and Yulia Putintseva
Sure.
have done you a bit of a favour this weekend on the aggro front. Elena Rybakina managed to lose 4 match points in a row in that match against Aryna Sabalenka. That was pretty extraordinary. You saw that, David, I think.
Yeah, it's one of those where I'm trying to work out, is it good news for Rybakina that she got to 4 match points against Aryna Sabalenka, or is it bad news because she then lost them? It's probably both, isn't it? But it's a big surprise to think that she'd get to that position and not seal one of them with her game. I do find her fascinating as well. We talk about Vondrousova for obvious reasons because she's just won this title, but you've got this Wimbledon champion whose game is just so perfectly suited to grass, more suited to it probably even than Sabalenka. And we're not talking about her that much because she's not done anything for such a long time. But she absolutely could come out there and win the thing.
I mean, it's only last year that going into the semi-finals, she seemed like the massive favourite of the 4 players left and was a set up against Krejcikova. And I remember at that point being like, she's cruising to the final. She would have been the big favourite against Paolini in the final. And then again, a bit like the best of 3 thing you're saying, it just suddenly, flick of a switch, she kind of got broken out of nowhere in the second set, and then the third set ran away from her, and that was it. But she was right there. But yeah, I mean, I do also think I can see why it's hard to kind of pick her as a favourite, just because there isn't really in the year since much of an evidence base to do that. You're kind of going on what's come before, which can be a good indicator, but it's a tricky one with her.
Wang Jinyu, by the way, the beaten finalist, she beat Daria Kasatkina, Coco Gauff, Paula Badosa, Ludmila Samsonova. Fantastic week for her. I think she's 33 in the live rankings, so she should get a seeding at Wimbledon. And she's 23 years old, and so which makes her of the age group that was effective at an extremely formative, critical time by COVID. And that applies, I think, even more to Chinese players who just stopped travelling altogether, didn't they? They so many of them just their careers were just totally curtailed at that point for a year or so. So I feel like we're only now just starting to see the capabilities of Wang Jinyu. So an incredible week for her. Be interesting to keep an eye on her at Wimbledon. Could go deep, could win first round, could lose first round rather. Just quickly heading to Nottingham, the WTA 250 there. Speaking of players who have secured themselves a Wimbledon seeding, McCartney Kessler has done that by winning the title, beating Diana Yastremska 6-4, 7-5 in the final. A lot of tough 3-set wins. She beat Beatrice Haddad-Maia in the first round, beat 2-time defending champion Katie Boulter in the quarterfinals. She's firmly in the category, Kessler, of players that nobody is going to want to face at Wimbledon, Charlie.
Yeah, and I mean, Haddad-Maia was the number 1 seed for the event, and like you say, Katie Boulter was going for a 3rd title in a row. So I mean, that was a big win. Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen loads of her, I have to say. She's not a player I know particularly well, but she's another one I will be looking out for in the Wimbledon draw. And I'm curious to see more and see how her kind of game matches up to the grass, because it obviously does. There obviously is something that happens.
You're where David was at the time of our end of year quiz last year when he called her Meredith, what was it?
Schofield.
Meredith Schofield.
I knew I'd got her. I knew who she was. I knew that she's good. I couldn't remember her name, so I went with Meredith Schofield as opposed to McCartney Kessler, and she's forever going to be known as Meredith to me, and I'm very proud of her. Very proud to see Meredith doing so well. And actually, I felt for her when she when she didn't beat Zheng Qinwen at Queen's the other week, and she was playing so well. She got to 4-1 in the third and couldn't quite get it over the line. But yeah, she's a bit like Lehechka. You know, the game makes sense on the surface, and you can see the eyes widening and are thinking, "This is my big chance." I mean, this is my surface, but you know.
What an unusual way to develop a sort of affection for a tennis player, by totally skewering their name.
Well, there's like a
interview
guilt that
quiz.
exists there, isn't there? I need
Yeah.
to.
That's right.
I need to repay this person. I feel bad.
Yeah. Right, that's it for part 2. We'll be back in part 3 with some news from the tennis world this week, and it's been quite a news-heavy week. We'll see you in part 3. Welcome back to part 3 of the Tennis Podcast, where we now turn our attention to New York and the US Open and their mixed doubles tournament. Now, we knew that they had these big plans to revamp the tournament, make it a 2-day event with 16 pairs, 8 getting in via their combined singles ranking, and then 8 getting in via wild cards. So a perceived total diss to doubles players. Lots of them spoke out about it at the time of this announcement. Andrea Vavasori and Sara Errani, the reigning mixed doubles champions at the US Open, most prominently spoke out kind of on the doubles side of things, but it caused a lot of consternation in the doubles specialist world, and really set the cat amongst the pigeons as a very radical thing to do. Well, this week the US Open announced the teams that have entered. Now, this isn't the final list of who will actually make up the draw for the mixed doubles. The entries close on July the 28th, so there's still quite a long time to go, and at that point it'll be those top 8 teams that get in automatically. So essentially this is a kind of headline grabbing thing, I assume, to start selling some tickets. It's giving Craig Tiley and his big entry list announcement at the Australian Open. But you've got to say, mission accomplished in terms of the headline grabbing. In terms of what they want to achieve, they are doing it. These are the teams that have entered, if you haven't already seen. Hold on to your hats, folks. Emma Navarro and Yannick Sinner. What a bizarre week Yannick Sinner has had. Released a classical single with Andrea Bocelli and announced a partnership with Emma Navarro. Zheng Qinwen and Jack Draper. Jessica Pegula and Tommy Paul. Jasmine Paolini and Lorenzo Musetti. Elena Rybakina and Taylor Fritz. Mira Andreeva and Daniel Medvedev, because the Olympics went so well. Madison Keys and Francis Tiafoe. Aryna Sabalenka and Grigor Dimitrov. Paula Badosa and Stefanos Tsitsipas. Emma Raducanu and Carlos Alcaraz. Belinda Bencic and Alexander Zverev. Olga Danilovic and Novak Djokovic. Taylor Townsend and Ben Shelton. Sara Errani and Andrea Vavasori, bless them, throwing their hats in the ring. And Nick Kyrgios.
I bet they'll be getting a wild card.
And Naomi Osaka. Lots to take in, folks. David, I'm going to go to you first in your stony face. Say what you need to say.
Listen, it's not the mixed doubles championship of the US Open, is it? That's what it's not. Don't try and tell me it is. Sounds fun though. I'll be watching, and I'll be talking to them, and I'll be wanting to know all about it, and we'll be talking about it. And I started to think as you were reeling off that list of names, what they should actually do if they really want to, if tennis wants to go down this route, and I understand why they would, just make all doubles like this. Then just stop having double specialists. Stop doing it. Just make it so that you have a ranking that incorporates doubles, and that players have got to play singles and doubles, or they can't play. And then I
suspect the US Open, if it were in charge of all of tennis, would be up for that. But I'm
sure
we've got these 7 different jurisdictions that.
I just feel like just sticking one in the middle of the tournament and saying this is your mixed doubles championship and trying to get people to really take that seriously. It's an exhibition. They've been doing it for the last couple of years. This kind of mixed madness or whatever they call it, and it's fun, great. And actually, they have sold this really well, and I do want to watch it. But it's just not the mixed doubles championship of the tournament because, well, where's your history? And I don't mind if they just would to draw a line and just say, yeah, we're just not doing that anymore because that was rubbish. And in fact, we're not going to do any of this doubles anymore because who's ever heard of these people? Who wants to watch these people? I'm sure that I'm not saying that on a personal note. I mean, I do find doubles still entertaining to watch, and I respect these people that are playing it. But if you really want to do it, just go all in.
But the counter to that, David, is in order to get the top players playing, it has to be a really short format. It has to be guaranteed only 2 days. There has to be a guarantee. I'm sure these top players are getting a handsome check to commit to playing this. It has to be something that is guaranteed not to interfere with their singles, right? So it's
these Masters 1000s are long enough, aren't they? You could definitely fit them into that.
Charlie, what do you think?
I do. It's a really good talking point because it brings together so many of the kind of tensions that exist within tennis and I guess any enterprise right now. You know, it's like, what are we led by? You know, do we just give the public what they want? And really what the public want is the biggest names playing more. Like that is, you know, so do we just double down and just cater to that? And at what cost? I mean, because, you know, there is an element to which a lot of the people who are up in arms about the mixed doubles, well, how much of the mixed doubles US Open did you watch last year? Did you see any of it? And yes, they might say, well, yes, I'd have loved to, but it wasn't broadcast or whatever. But there is a lack of interest, really. And there is something very potent about men and women playing sport together. And that is a USP of tennis that often is lost. Like, there's no doubt. It is really cool. Like watching, you know, remember like the Hopman Cup, and there was that picture of Federer and Serena, and it kind of broke the internet and all of that. Like, there is rich potential definitely to tap into. And yeah, we probably don't do it. I see David's point that, you know, maybe there's a middle ground, and, you know, this exists as a kind of exhibition-y thing like it previously has, and you still have an actual mixed doubles event, and there are victims here, those doubles players, because bearing in mind as well, like for them, it's a decent chance of earnings. A lot of these players aren't earning, you know, stupid sums. Instead, what we're doing is saying, no, we're going to put £1 million prize pot plus, as you say, appearance fees, whatever, to these players who are already making a fortune. But is that just what, you know, is that just capitalism? Is that what we want? You know, ultimately, a lot of the people I imagine who feel instinctively anti this are also going to really enjoy watching Carlos Alcaraz playing with Emma Raducanu or some of those partnerships you've mentioned. And it is going to get people talking about the sport. So I do feel quite conflicted about it. And I don't know where it goes. I mean, I guess as well, they would say, you know, no, this isn't, you know, we've still got the men's doubles and the women's doubles. We still absolutely respect doubles as a discipline. It's just this one kind of bonus tournament, which, you know, one could argue has, you know, isn't like a super serious event. Like, yes, it's important, but it's not, you know, we're not talking about players really inciting their mixed doubles records very often. Like it's already fairly low down the food chain, I suppose would be their argument.
Yeah, and it could, if this is a big success, that could kind of, by relativity, diminish the other two doubles tournaments, right? You're going to have a full stadium watching Raducanu and Alcaraz versus Keys and Tiafoe in the final, and then on come Neil Skupski and Joe Salisbury. Like that, it's just going to look totally lackluster. by comparison.
Is there a chance, and I'm sure people will shout this down, but is there a chance that it lifts doubles?
A rising tide raises all boats.
Yeah, and I'm not saying I believe that necessarily, but in a kind of like people watching like, yeah, doubles is great. Why don't we watch more doubles? Because doubles is like, that's the thing. It is, doubles can be so good to watch. And, you know, it's what a lot of people play. And so there's a relatability element that, you know, maybe there isn't with singles. But we're talking about like, you know, it will be a big talking point. And it will be then interesting to see, do any of the other slams follow suit in any way? Or is it just the US Open thing? I suspect
they'll be looking at the balance sheets of this very closely. I don't think Wimbledon would ever do it, but they don't have the same their financial equations are very different to the other three slams. So
nor at the moment do they have a third week. So
right, exactly. So I think Paris and particularly Australia, I'd imagine, will be looking very closely at this and treating the US Open as the canary down the mine. I'm with you, Charlie. I'm conflicted, and I've surprised myself a bit with my reaction to this, because when these changes were first unveiled, sort of in the abstract, conceptually, I was totally with you, David. I was really grumpy about it, and the trashing of history and the ripping away of integrity from it all. And then when they made this announcement, I was really into it. I'm really into it. Like, it got my attention. I'm into all the plots. I've raised all the eyebrows that everybody on the internet has raised. I was very into Emma Raducanu showing up to watch her doubles partner Carlos Alcaraz on Saturday at Queen's. I'm very into how on earth Emma Navarro and Yannick Sinner came about. What Zheng Qinwen and Jack Draper's going to look like as a partnership. Andreeva and Medvedev getting the band back together. I'm really, really into it. And I've been having the same thoughts about what you were saying, Charlie, about how criminally undermined the potential for men and women playing together it is in tennis. Like it's pathetic, really, how little tennis maximizes the potential there. You know, just look at the Olympics last year and the amount of excitement around the doubles, and in particular the mixed doubles. And I suppose part of that is novelty value. Like, if it happened week in, week out, it would be a bit less exciting. But I still think the potential for the interactions and dynamics and all the rest of it, I'm really, really excited by that. And I feel like it'll be
Serena 2019 was
absolutely a real celebration of this huge USP that tennis has of, I'm not going to say equality, because as we've discussed earlier in the show, there's a long way to go there, but something far closer to equality and union than really any other sport has going on. And I'm really excited by that. I wish there was a way they could have done this while preserving some more integrity of the competition and of the meaning of that trophy and the meaning of those names going on the honour roll. But the problem is I don't have the answer to that, because I do think to get the big names playing, it has to be a really diminished format, because tennis is too demanding now. They are not going to take any risk with their singles. So I share your concern about integrity, David, but I don't have a solution, and I cannot deny my feelings.
I genuinely want to know what happens to last year's champions, whether they get to go in it, whether they get given a wild card.
I suspect politically they'll be given a wild card.
You know, I think if they could put if they had but are they going to get, let's say, what about the beaten finalists last year? What about the semi-finalists? You can just imagine that Nick Kyrgios is going to get a wild card ahead because.
Yeah,
because he'll turn it into a
at the moment, Osaka and Kyrgios aren't anywhere near getting in on the basis of their ranking. I mean, Kyrgios isn't a tennis player, is he? And I continue to find it incredibly disappointing how Naomi Osaka is prepared to be used to launder the Nick Kyrgios reputation. But I think the USTA are going to give them a wild card.
I just think, I do think it's difficult. I mean, it's kind of like computer gaming. This, it reminds me of like on old computer games, you just pick like totally random pairings out of curiosity, and it would be like, this is great fun. And obviously,
what are you trying to say about Elena Rybakina and Taylor Fritz, Charlie?
Well,
you saying they're not mates?
They've actually played together in a pre-US Open thing last year. They've probably got more experience than a lot of these pairs. But yeah, like Draper Jung, I mean, that's such a curious one. But it is, and to younger people who, are used to gaming and this sort of thing, I think it will be a lot of fun. And I do think, players reveal elements of themselves in these kind of pairings, and, and that will... casuals are going to be interested in this. And I do think it's hard to be too sanctimonious about it when, only speaking for myself, I watch zero mixed doubles. Like, I do. So I feel a little bit hypocritical. And I think that's true of a lot of people who are criticizing it. Like, it's one thing if you're saying like, how can you take this away from me? Like, I love them. But it's like, that's just not really the case. Like,
surely there's a middle ground, though, Charlie. Surely you can make it more fun and stick more singles players in it without just making it this.
I would like to think so, but none of us have a proposal for that, do we? I certainly don't.
Have I been asked?
Unless
I'm asking you.
I haven't got time to tell you about it right now. I'm sure I can come up with something different to a 2-day exhibition with 16 teams, 8 of which are wild cards. That is not a tennis tournament.
I mean, you could even a middle ground would be to say, okay, we're going to do 8 of the pairs are based on singles ranking, 8 of the pairs based on doubles rankings. That would feel like a sort of compromise. And
Charlie sorted it.
And there'd still be, I'm sure.
And then there'd be the spice of all those doubles players,
which would
with
be
something
really
to prove.
A bit like in the Olympics last year when like Nadal and Alcaraz got taught a bit of a doubles lesson. It was by Krajicek and Ram, I think, wasn't it? And I did find that really interesting. There were quite a few of those pairings that popped up. It was like the singles guys,
and it would get rid of Nick Kyrgios. Sign me up. Yeah. Okay, great. Okay, well, look, the proof will be in the pudding, won't it? I suspect they're selling tickets. And
well, the thing is, like, they'll rarely, I feel, once you've crossed a Rubicon like this, you rarely then go back in a way, because
genies don't go back in bottles, do they?
It just will be. It will sell more tickets. It will
That's
make
the
them
thing.
more
They've
money.
gone so far, so immediately. There's no way you can say, actually, you know what? Next year we're going to do the 8 doubles teams and the 8 singles teams thing.
Yeah, admitting fault or error or having gone too far isn't very in fashion at the moment, is it? Particularly in America.
But it's a bit like as well with like media coverage. And I'm so grateful, like, for the New York Times, The Athletic, we do cover such a wide range because our readers seem to genuinely be curious about the wideness and the depth of the sport. But, increasingly publications, if you say to them, do you want to write a story about a couple of doubles players, or do you want to write a story about big name X does teeny thing Y? The latter is always going to get more views. So you're going to, and then you'll get that positive feedback, and you're going to keep doing that. And it kind of feels a little, it's like, that's why I think it's interesting, because we're seeing that, and not just in sport, but in all areas of the media, it's narrower and narrower and narrower. And this is kind of an extension of that. But then you're like, well, shouldn't you just give the people what they want? And there's no right answer here. It's very complicated.
The people have been given what they want, Charlie, and the world is burning. So...
Yeah, there is that.
there is that.
Can't trust democracy.
Totally unrelated to the world burning. Yannick Sinner and Andrea Bocelli releasing a single. Charlie, your reaction to this and the video and the.
Well, I'm glad it was trailed, so I was kind of, or maybe I'm not, because if I'd just seen it without the kind of trailer the day before, just to see it cold,
you'd have thought the world had ended and we were in the twilight
I think I would have
zone.
thought it was some sort of weird fever dream, but good luck to him.
Yeah, good luck to them both. a couple of other bits of news from this. I'm having to do some real like the one show segues here. Petra Kvitova has announced that she will retire at the US Open. She will continue playing over the summer. She says she doesn't know exactly what her hardcourt schedule will look like leading up to the US Open, but that will be her final tournament. She's received a wild card into Wimbledon, so she will get to play one last Wimbledon. David, when we were talking about this announcement on one of our tennis channel shows, Matt made the point that there's a strong case to be made that Petra Kvitova is the best player never to be number one.
Yeah, I think it was very good, very well made point, because she got so close to it so many times, a match away, and won 2 Wimbledons, was one of those players that the very best in the world had no answer to, really, unless it was Serena Williams. Really, everybody else suffered at the hands of Petra Kvitova when she was on. I won't forget the way she beat Eugenie Bouchard in that second of her Wimbledon finals. It wasn't even a contest because Kvitova was so good. And then to make such an extremely good performance in the rest of her career, despite that awful attack that she suffered in her own home, where she had her hand sort of cut so badly that she lost all feeling and sensitivity in her hand. I mean, absolutely astonishing that she managed to make a comeback from that. And great career.
Yeah, and an incredibly nice person as well, incredibly popular player. And just to put into context as well, something I worked out, channeling my inner Matt here, since 96, she's the only multiple Wimbledon champion whose surname isn't Williams on the women's side. So just to put into context how rare it is to actually do what she did, because Wimbledon has been so, apart from the Williams sisters, been so kind of wildly inconsistent. And I think people... I certainly, when that Bouchard match David references, that 2014 final, you watch that and you're kind of like, how will anyone beat her on grass? She's just phenomenal. I mean, she was just destroying the ball. And that whole run, I think she lost only a set that whole tournament. Just incredible. I think the number one thing as well maybe is fitting in some ways, because she was never like a sort of just reliably consistent player. Like, she had this incredible top level, but she could talk about like predictions busters. Good God, Petra Kvitova, some of those, you just be like, is she winning the thing or is she going out in the first round? Yeah, it was just
we had to record emergency podcasts because of her.
So like, I feel somehow oddly appropriate. She never quite got the number one, which is such like a kind of hallmark of consistency and always bringing it.
Yeah, it's a great point. We also had the news this week that Pam Shriver is no longer going to be part of the Donovan Vekic coaching team. She said, one of the greatest experiences I've had in my 50 plus years in tennis has been helping coach Donna Vekic since October 2022. Here in LA, it's been a challenging year. Therefore, I need to lean even more into my community and my family's well-being. I'm stepping down from Team DV, which is sad to see, but I'm glad Pam is focusing on herself. And if she does coach again, then somebody is going to be very, very lucky to have her in their coaching box. That is for sure. And one last one show style segue from me, Charlie, on the news front. I just wanted to touch upon your piece from last week about online abuse of tennis players, because it's something that's been quite a lot in the news over here in the UK, because Britain's Katie Bolter has spoken out about it. And you did a piece in The Athletic, which was very interesting. Headline, Why Online Abuse of Tennis Players Led to Law Enforcement Investigations in 2024. 15 cases were considered so threatening that they were escalated to law enforcement agencies last year.
Yeah, and bear in mind as well, like, there are some big numbers in the WTA and ITF's report, but that's still only really scratching the surface, because there's so much stuff that goes on and goes unchecked and doesn't necessarily get picked up on by the software they have and by the people involved, because it's such a big problem. And just to give a sense of like how long this has been going on for, I remember in January 2018, I did a big report on social media abuse. So that's 7.5 years ago. And I really see very little reading back that piece and looking at the conversations we're having now, really so little has changed. And well, if anything, social media, as we know, and certainly certain platforms have got a lot more toxic. And the thing that's really scary, I guess, is that we've seen a little bit of the online world crossing into the physical world, like in the Iga Swiatek Miami incident, and that, there were kind of posts from the person involved, kind of that talking in a very hostile way towards her. And so often what you'll hear is we're being like, well, just go off social media, don't use social media. And it's like, well, these people need social media. We're not yet like, yes, if you're a top player, of course you've got the luxury. Jack Draper basically says, I don't go on social media. He can afford to. He's one of the best players in the world. He's got huge endorsement deals, people who can run his socials, etc. If you're a jobbing player where every dollar is important, you can't just go off it, because you need it to promote yourself and to try and get deals and endorsements. You're all competing with other people. So it's not as simple. I'm sure most people, we've all probably been there. Like, you'd love to just not use it, but there are times when you're like, I wish I didn't have to, but you need to promote yourself. That's all part of the game. And it's just a shame that doing that, with a big shame, comes with this huge cost. And I think it's hard to really comprehend. And obviously you get desensitized to it to an extent, but just every match, every defeat, and even like Pegula said it as well. She said even turning off mentions and ability to interact with her, she still then sees it coming on her newsfeed. And I think that's got worse as well, especially X is now, who you follow seems to be almost irrelevant. You're still just getting served up all this stuff. And I'm sure it's the way the algorithm works. Obviously, if people are talking about you, you're far more likely to see it. So it's this hugely intractable problem that tennis and society has grappled with for a long time.
And that tennis and sport is implicated in because of the way it's embraced gambling, betting,
yeah.
Because so much of this abuse is coming from people that have lost money betting on their matches.
Yeah. And tennis is a sport that is bet on a huge amount. It's right up there. And you can understand, there's always matches going on. There are little things within matches you can bet on. There's so much to it. And yeah, I remember from the piece I referenced from a few years ago, some of the players were saying that. They were like, how can there be betting sponsorships and things? Like, how can we be complicit in this, basically? That we're then just getting abuse from these people. I think, that area of it's maybe improved a little bit. Like, I think there are slightly fewer of those things and slightly visible. But it's really sad. And yeah, Katie, I'd recommend reading the brace yourself, but Katie Bolter's interview with the BBC is really sobering.
Yeah.
And not extraordinary in any way. That's what's so sobering about it.
Yeah. This week, while we were on air yesterday, David, commentating on the Queen's final, I got a notification from the Wimbledon referee's office that an order of play was out for Wimbledon.
Yeah.
Because qualifying is about to start. Wimbledon is about to start. Are we ready? Do you feel ready, David?
Oh, yeah. Let's do it. Can't wait.
We've had Artifice and Casper Ruud both withdraw from Wimbledon. No great surprise.
That, but needs must.
It's a relief, though, isn't it? That Artifice has withdrawn, I think.
Yeah, he needs to have probably 2 or 3 months off.
Yeah.
And just sort this out.
We have events this week. There's a WTA 500 in Bad Homburg. Incredibly strong field there. Jessica Pegula, Jasmine Paolini, Mira Andreeva and Iga Swiatek. are the top 4 seeds. Round ones include Emma Navarro against Marta Kostyuk. Donna Vekic has drawn Dennis Schneider for the second week in a row. Alexandrova Bencic. P.S. Bencic is going to be unseeded at Wimbledon. And Svitolina against Mertens. In fact, didn't I see Svitolina's already beaten Elisa Mertens? Tennis is just always happening. I think I woke up to an alert that Svitolina had beaten Mertens. And we've already had some spectacular aggro from Sakkari and Putin-Sava. Would anybody like to comment on Sakkari's Lucas Russell, Andy Murray inspired "Nobody Likes You"?
All for it.
Great.
I mean, all for like I said, just all for the authenticity. And handshakes is such a weird thing. I love it. It's such a good thing about tennis. But God, there must be times you're like, I really don't want to have to do this. But it's just so great that we have it as a way of being like, right, there's been tension, there's been aggro. Go and speak to one another right at the end of the match. Just prodding them towards falling out with one another.
Yeah, I mean, this was Sakkari crossed the net to go over to Putin-Sava and say, "What was that you just said?" It was a bit kind of Medvedev Tsitsipas Miami 2018.
I mean, Arthur Fils as well. It's a shame because he's had a few kind of aggro-y handshakes. Not to say he's been to blame, David, of course, but
no, usually it's been Alexander Zverev.
Well, there is that, yeah. But I do think it's one of it's one of the many micro great things about tennis that you have to do this.
Yeah, and well done, Maria Sakkari, for giving us that joy. We've got a WTA 250 in Eastbourne this week. Daria Kasatkina, Emma Raducanu, she plays today. Yelena Ostapenko, Barbora Krejcikova and Ons Jabeur are all in the draw in Eastbourne and the WTA side. And there's also an ATP 250. Taylor Fritz, Jakub Menchik, Ugo Humbert, Tommy Paul are the top 4 seeds. And there's an ATP 250 in Mallorca. Ben Shelton, Felix Auger-Aliassime, Talon Griekspoor and Alex Mickelson are the top 4 seeds. How can there be that much tennis happening in the week leading up to Wimbledon, plus Wimbledon qualifying and draws and media day? It's so much. And Matt's gone to see Bruce Springsteen in Spain.
I do think there is a we talk about those 2-week Masters in the clay court season. There's it can feel like a kind of sparsity of things sometimes because they're just kind of dragging on. The grass court season is so intense and there's so much going on. And at the start of the day, you're checking 4 different tournament order of plays to try and kind of keep on top of everything. But it is great these few weeks.
Yeah, it's brilliant. But I also don't blame Matt for checking out for a couple of days and going to put his Basque beret on. In terms of our plans this week, we have got a Wimbledon Relived coming your way on Wednesday, and it is focusing on, David,
the 90s, 1995 Wimbledon.
Some of the press clippings, Charlie, that Matt has been sending through from the Wimbledon Library from 1995 are so extraordinary, and a lot of them are Rosetsky related.
I am so pumped for this. Can I send you an additional press clipping? One of my first ever, I want to say articles, in inverted commas, aged, what would I have been, 8, I think? I found this recently. We had to do a creative writing story, and my story was that I was playing tennis with a friend. And then I need to check. I'll check this. And then we were watching the Wimbledon final, and then we got sucked into the TV, and we're playing the Wimbledon final. I think I'm Sampras, my friend's Becker, and it then just turns into a quite boring sort of blow-by-blow account of the Wimbledon final as imagined by an 8-year-old me. But I'll dig it out and send it to you, and you can add it to your clippings from Wimbledon 95.
Add it to the article
Wimbledon.
Where Greg Rosetsky reveals that he starts the day with 16 Weetabix.
Okay, I can't top that.
Honestly, the 90s were wild.
That was my first ever Wimbledon. I'm so looking forward to listening to this.
Yeah, I'm I'm looking forward to it as well. That is recording on Wednesday and will be up Wednesday for Friends of the Tennis Podcast. Thursday, we have our live show at Shoreditch Town Hall, 7 p.m, an incredible venue, an incredible evening. We really are excited. Last few tickets are available. We'll put the link in our show notes. I'll pop it on Instagram. If you'd like to come along, we would love to see you. Charlie, hopefully you'll be able to make it. I know it's a busy time.
Yeah, I hope so. I've got this Thursday evening event that I'd far less like to go to, so I'm hoping I can squeeze my way out of that one and come along to yours.
Tough scene if people involved in that event are listening, but we appreciate being your first choice.
Hopefully they won't be.
It'd be lovely to see you there. Billie Jean's gonna come. All sorts of people. It's going to be really fun, and we'll hang around in the bar afterwards to say hello. If anybody wants to show me a picture of their dog, that would be very welcome too. And then Friday is when it all kicks off. Daily live podcasts, of course, on YouTube from Wimbledon from Friday. That's our draw day podcast. Matt will be wearing his very best outfit for his very favourite draw. Saturday is media day. Sunday we'll have our preview, and then it all kicks off on Monday. And we're going to be live every day at 9:30 p.m. UK time from Wimbledon. No pet mascot or shout outs this week because no Matt this week, and we don't know how to do it without him. But of course we have our mascots. Hello to Phoebe, hello to Maisie, and hello to Roger. Hello to our top folks and executive producers Greg, Chris and Jeff. We are proudly part of the Athletic Podcast Network, and do make sure you check out Charlie and Matt's stories this week, last week, next week, throughout Wimbledon. As there's great stuff in there, even if Charlie isn't so lowbrow as to do the streaker relive story. Somebody will, folks. Somebody will do that important hashtag journalism for you.
Maybe I will now. Now you've got me thinking about it.
Now I've put the
It was
pressure
such
on.
a thing. It was such a mid-90s thing, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Streaking.
what's happened to streaking?
Yeah,
That's
okay,
the
now
biggest story
there's
here.
The way, yeah, and what
Yeah,
it said
that's the
about
way
the
in.
90s in
The
society.
demise of
Yeah,
streaking.
Okay, sold.
Great. Okay. Right. We'll be back for Friends on Wednesday of this week talking about the 90s. We'll be back on Friday with our Wimbledon draw show. It is all happening, folks. We hope to see you on Thursday at Shoreditch Town Hall. Thank you for listening, Charlie. Thank you for filling Matt's very considerable shoes. And we will speak to you very soon indeed. I love you.